This exhibition is called Frank Lloyd Wright From Within Outward. Wright is always looking to generate these beautiful spaces on the inside, spaces that relate to the outside. And he's always starting from those insides, so he really builds his buildings from within outward. We're dividing Wright's work up into 3 segments. The smallest segment is the residential projects. We're showing those in Tower 2. The ramp system is roughly all the buildings in the public domain. And then at the end you get Tower 5, which are the city projects, the largest scale of Wright's work. We have a lot of drawings in the show, 201. And although they're very beautiful and they're a joy to look at, for a lot of people it's difficult to read a drawing. So 2 new things that you're seeing in this show are models and animations, and they're very helpful to give you a sense of how spaces work. The animations are made of unrealized projects because sometimes these are the best buildings to show a concept of how spaces are organized.
Situ Studio is a design studio started by 5 members, which were all students and classmates at the Cooper Union School of Architecture. Over the last few years, it became known for making 3-dimensional models for architects. When the Guggenheim asked us to design 6 models for the show, we had a chance to realize how great of a builder Wright was. He was not just a theoretical architect, he was always testing materials and building techniques in every one of his projects. This is a model of Taliesin in Wisconsin. Taliesin is a Wright family home property. It's basically a place where he grew up and spent most of his life working on both architectural structures as well as the land itself.
The interesting thing about the Taliesin Valley is that it's a landscape that Wright is crafting. It's really about how a landscape can work for architecture and how architecture really works in a landscape.
This land became an experimentation lab for Wright, where he would test concepts of landscape design as well as farming and agriculture. Because this project is about the changing nature of the landscape, we're going to combine this model with a video projection showing changes that took place throughout the decades of Wright's life.
There is quite a big difference between historical models and contemporary models. The historical models are made by Wright, so they're very beautiful and great to look at. Unfortunately, there's not that many surviving anymore. If you want to get people a sense of space and a sense of how that building is constructed, it's important that you build new models. The Jacobs House is probably one of the most straightforward Wright houses. It's the first of the Usonian houses. Economical materials, beautifully designed, but accessible for everybody.
In the example of the Jacobs House, we created a number of these kind of smaller scaled exploded models. At the bottom are the radiant heat coils, the concrete slab, the brick piers, the board and batten walls, the windows, and the 3 different roof planes. After we're nailed down as many of the design components as possible at this scale, we move on to a larger or full-scale representation of the installation, and we start working with the actual materials and building techniques. What we wanted to do for this exhibition is show models that are not scaled replicas of the build structures, but show some things that are unique about each individual project. In this case, it's the building coming apart into its elements and exploding. In other models, it's taking very specific sections through the buildings or showing how the landscape plays a role in that project. Gordon Strong, also known as the Automobile Objective, is a project that Wright designed for a client who had the site which was atop a peak of this hill. The whole project was revolved around the car and how you arrive to the site by taking this road around the hill, which becomes one of the ramps of the building. This is where the cars would travel up the ramp and on this level down the ramp. These are the interior spaces occupied by visitors to the project, and this is the planetarium that's at the center of the building.
This is probably more of a language that we're interested in, with the words and the cork instead of all the painted materials. And if you think about the basic elements of Wright's work, and especially how his buildings that work well with their environment, then you really start to realize, like, Wright is a pretty contemporary architect, and he was always ahead of his time.
This is a mock-up of Wright's proposal for Baghdad. It's called Plan for the Greater Baghdad. It was never executed, but it's something that he felt very passionate about. Although he was asked to design an opera house, he came back with a proposal for a new portion of a city.
What this show is really trying to do is inspire people to think what spaces can do. What can spaces mean for you, and how can they shape your everyday life? I hope the show is going to inspire people to demand better spaces, and not necessarily look back in revitalizing some Wrightian style, but look forward and use Wright's vocabulary to develop something that's relevant today and for the future.